what's going on in the world today, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, Annie, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, and featuring Curtis C.S. Bennett and the most interesting guests that you'll find anywhere on internet radio. So sit back, relax, and remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
All right, and welcome to another adventure on Southern Sense live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, X, half a dozen other places, including our homepage, southernsense.net. I'm your hostess with the mostest, or I should say the least mostest, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, Annie, along with my co-host who's going, oh God, how much more is she going to screw up this opening? Curtis C.S. Bennett. Oh, Curtis, we just lost your sound. Just lost your sound now. Yep, your sound is gone again. Oh, you back?
I don't know.
Yep. You are back. We got to get you a headset. I mean, something that works.
I didn't do a thing.
Well, we got ourselves a great show lined up. A lot to talk about, a lot to do, as always. It's been nonstop, one thing hitting us after another. We're starting off with Mark Tapscott, who's the DC correspondent and senior editor for the Epoch Times. And that's going to be followed by Hans von Spakovsky of the Heritage Foundation, who's an authority on a wide range of issues, including civil rights and justice and the First Amendment and immigration and Project 2025, which we'll be talking about. So we have a lot to talk about and a lot to do. But, oh my goodness, Curtis, we got coming up the Democratic Convention next week. And boy, stuff really hitting the fan. I did a broadcast yesterday. I was a guest on a big Patriot radio that plays our show on Saturdays.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about local issues, but even locally, things are nuts. It's as if the world has just gone crazy. And then as soon as I finished that interview, our friend Tim Tapp, that has Tap Into Truth, had me on his show, and we were going over all the craziness and stuff going on with Kamala Harris and her VP pick. Oh, geez, it's completely nuts out there.
Well, I would have to say that it's going to get nuttier with this convention of theirs, coming up. And I'll tune in to just, see, get a feel for, where they're going with this. Because they're treating her like the second coming of Margaret Thatcher, the liberal version. And the woman hasn't accomplished anything.
No. I mean, she's had 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, to do something about the border. That's the only thing she had to work on. She's had nothing else to work on. She doesn't give press conferences. And this was the question. Will we see her give a press conference before the debate?
Maybe one.
It'll be carefully scripted, too.
Kid gloves, yeah.
Yeah, the way that Joe Biden was fed all the questions ahead of time, and he rehearsed and practiced the answers, that's what we're going to see. She will not give an unscripted one like Trump did yesterday in Bainbridge, New Jersey. See, I walked into the room. I didn't even know that he was giving a press conference. And what a backdrop. He had tables and tables full of food and other items people purchase every day. And he was talking about the increase in prices from the end of his term to today, and how per household we're paying approximately $1,000 per household more per month. And how many people can afford to spend an additional $1,000 a month? You got to cut back somewhere. I mean, it's to the point where I when I go into the grocery store, I'm always aiming for the aisles that have buy one, get one.
Yeah, Trump, I think he should stay on message, as we say in the military. And that's the economy and energy costs. And
our security. All
right. Yeah, definitely. Because we have open borders. We got chaos breaking out all around the world. And I don't think it's going to get any better under Kamala.
No.
Or is it?
And we have a record number of people that are dying from drug overdoses and fentanyl poisoning. I will not say fentanyl poisoning and drug overdoses are the same, because many people, especially young kids, don't realize they're ingesting fentanyl. And even getting fentanyl on your skin is enough to cause serious damage or death. So you may be handling it without even knowing it. That makes it a poisoning. If someone's given it and they're unaware, that's a poisoning. That's not a drug overdose. But yet our government will characterize it as a drug overdose. We need our government to be honest with us. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey.
I just did an oxymoron, government and transparency.
Hey, they weren't honest about COVID. You know, if you went in there with a hanged toenail, they would have called it COVID.
No, it's getting crazy. Now the World Health Organization, WHO, has declared monkeypox as the next worldwide medical emergency, which gives them, quote, the right to demand we shut down. Watch, wear masks, do all this other stuff. It's coming out of Africa, and it's hitting kids and men that are either bisexual or homosexual. And the reason it's hitting kids worse is because it's tainted meat or sexually transmitted.
And this supposed to come in time for the elections or something?
Yeah, watch for the next set of shutdowns. Watch for the next set of shutdowns. You know, lockdowns and everything else are coming to a street near you. Anyway, these are some of the things we have to talk about. Those that listen to our show know that we do start off each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And what I love about this new format that we have moved into with the video, I can then pull up video clips off the internet on tributes, which you can then see and hear the people that are most affected by these heroes who have fallen in the line of duty. And sometimes we don't have to do a hero in the line of duty, just an American who has done extraordinary things. Doesn't have to necessarily be a first responder or a military, but just a basic everyday American. But because of their actions and who and what they are, they deserve recognition also. So today's dedication is going out to Patrolman Justin Hare of the New Mexico State Police in New Mexico. His end of watch was Friday, March 15th.
In the quiet hours of the morning, while most of us were safeguarded in our homes, Patrolman Justin Hare of the New Mexico State Police was vigilantly guarding our community. It was March 15th, 2024, a date that now carries a profound significance for us all, particularly for Patrolman Hare's family. Patrolman Hare was attending to a welfare check concerning a vehicle halted near mile marker 3 on 20 on I-40 to the west of Tucumcari. In the fulfillment of his duties, he encountered an unexpected and tragic end. The events that led to his passing serve as a stark reminder of the unforeseeable hazards our officers confront daily. The perpetrator behind this egregious action is still at large, leaving behind a bereaved community and a family coping with a loss beyond words. Today, as we reflect on Patrolman Justin Hare's life, we pay homage to his courage, his dedication to duty, and the ultimate sacrifice he offered.
Jeremy Smith, we are coming for you. I implore you to turn yourself in.
This morning, law enforcement on a cross-country manhunt looking for 33-year-old Jeremy Smith, who they say killed one of their own in cold blood.
The last words Officer Hare uttered on this earth was to offer help to a man who's about to kill him.
Law enforcement say Smith is also a person of interest in the death of 52-year-old Fonicia Machado IV in Dillon County, South Carolina, a paramedic who was reported missing on Thursday and then found dead Friday.
We have reason to believe that they knew each other.
Police say Smith stole Machado IV's white BMW and drove 1,500 miles across the country to Quay County, New Mexico, where he got a flat tire early Friday on this interstate. 35-year-old Officer Justin Hare was dispatched to help, and after a short conversation about repairing his tire and offering a ride back to town, things took a deadly turn. The suspect seen here on Officer Hare's dash cam video.
Without warning, the suspect pulled out a firearm and shot Officer Hare. Smith then walked to the driver's side and shot Officer Hare again.
Officials say Officer Hare's radio duress signal went off. Another officer dispatched and saw Hare's patrol car speeding, ultimately finding it empty on the side of the road. Hare found injured nearby.
Officer Hare died serving his state and his community. On a cold, dark, and windy morning, he offered help to a person he thought was in need. That person killed him in cold blood.
Manhunt for the suspect now over.
And we are learning who New Mexico State Police Officer Justin Hare was. Action 7 News reporter Andres Valle is here with those details.
Doug, Shelley, Officer Justin Hare lost his life on Friday. Now his immediate family telling us that they're not ready to speak on camera, but want to let me know that he was more than just a man in a uniform.
They're going to need this. And remember.
Sergeant Wade Strand opening up to us about New Mexico State Police Officer Justin Hare, saying he was more than just a man with a badge, but a huge family man who was heavily involved in his community.
He volunteered within the community. He was a coach for Pee Wee. He was at the school on a daily basis. Huge family man. Loved his kids, loved his family, loved his girlfriend.
Over the weekend, the suspect accused of killing him arrested.
While our work is not done here, this now gives us the opportunity to take the time to start grieving the loss of our officer.
Police Chief Troy Weasler visibly distraught over the loss of one of his own, putting on a face to let us know that his family can start the grieving process.
And our heart goes out to the families and friends of Officer Hare. In the coming days, we'll now be able to spend some time focusing on honoring him in the best way that we can and grieving his loss.
He was willing to give up his own life to protect us in the community. I could count on Justin. If things got difficult here and we needed assistance, could count on Justin, even if he was off duty.
And Officer Hare leaves behind 2 daughters as well as his girlfriend who's expecting their 3rd child. Reporting in studio, I'm Andres Valle for KOET, Action 7 News.
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, beautiful America, living our legacy. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm to our convictions with wide open hearts, eager to listen. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, yeah, we led with grace. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for all the next generation. Let it be said. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for all the next generation.
All right, and we are back. You're here listening to Southern Sense on my homepage, southernsense.net, not net, as well as up on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, and half a dozen other places. Just look for Southern Sense. Just Google it, and I'll pop up all over the place. My smiling face along with Curtis's. Oh, man. We've got about 10 minutes before Mark should call in. That's if he hasn't gotten swamped by the swamp in DC. But we were starting to talk about the convention coming up next week, and I've been getting feedback from a lot of different people. But there's an article here that came up in the DC Daily Journal, and they're saying that Trump campaign is planning on that week. Normally, it's traditional. Whenever one party has their convention, the other party will say, give them a little space. All right, let them have their convention. It's going to cover the news. So I'm going to stay in the background. And then when we have the convention, that's usually the courtesy. Well, the last couple of election cycles, that wasn't happening. Every time the Republicans had their convention, the Democratic side went and said, well, we're just going to keep on stumping. No matter what. We're going to try to steal your thunder. So Trump says, all right, payback time. So he's planning events. He and J.D. Vance will have a series of events while the convention's ongoing. So we'll see how many people turn on and look at which one to see who is truly the really popular for the presidency. I have a funny feeling Trump has a lot of thunder still.
Yeah, I also heard that if he does any outdoor rallies, he's going to have bulletproof glass this time.
Yes.
Yeah. Wise decision.
Mm-hmm. It's never been offered to a former president in the past, but considering the fact that there was an assassination attempt, it is a wise thing to do. They did extend that to him.
I would have thought it would have been standard. I mean, since what happened in '68.
Yeah, well, and look at Reagan. He was considered. Yes. All right. So the Democrats are crafting theirs very carefully, and they've moved Joe Biden up to speak on the first night. And yes, Joe Biden's going to be speaking on the first night, and everything's being orchestrated by the Hollywood producer Steven Spielberg. Yeah, Steven Spielberg is the one who's orchestrating everything. All right, so this is what someone said to me, seeing that Joe Biden is speaking on the first night. He goes, what do you think is going to happen when Joe Biden goes out and he sees that crowd out there? Do you think he's going to turn around and keep his endorsement with Kamala Harris? Or is he going to say, I'm back, I'm running again?
Or he's backing Trump or something.
But on a side note, we still have problems with the Secret Service because we just had 2 days ago the rally in North Carolina. And the Secret Service was doing their last final walkthrough before Trump's arrival. And as this one agent is doing the final walkthrough, there was a room off to a separate room. And in the room was another Secret Service agent. And she was off her post. She had her infant child with her, and she was breastfeeding. But catch this, the two individuals that were working the event that showed her into that room so she could privately breastfeed the child, number one, were not called pinned. And Secret Service terms means that they have been cleared. They've had a background check and everything. We know that they're the safe people. They can go, they have the badges to go wherever they need to go within our perimeter. These people did not have the badges for it. They were not pinned.
Now,
So
what if one of those were assassins?
she allowed these individuals to invade the perimeter that were not authorized to be inside the perimeter. She left her post. And what was she doing with her infant child with her? Why did she had a child with the other parent or
relative?
A responsible individual that would have the care of that child. I'm sorry, ladies. There are things called breast pumps. If you cannot be with your child to breastfeed, you pump the breast, you put the milk aside, and whoever the guardian is of that child, then at the appointed time gives the child your breast milk. You do not take your child, an infant, into a dangerous situation. What if there was another assassination attempt and she had that baby in her arms?
Well, do you think she will face any repercussions other than a slap on the hand? Don't do that.
I am praying that she's off the force, because that is not an agent that I want to have my back. That is not an agent I want to have my back.
You have
You
to
already
wonder
know that just a month before, Donald Trump had his life, nearly lost his life. And agents had to put themselves between the shooter and the former president. She was not on her post. She was not doing her job. And he was going to arrive shortly.
Yeah, you have to wonder about these people's IQ. You know, I mean, that's just common sense after what, all that happened in the past couple of months, that you would be on your, P's and Q's. You would dot your I's and cross your T's.
Even if this woman didn't have someone to take care of the baby, then she goes to her boss. Listen, I have no one to take care of the child. I can't. You're honest. Be honest. And even if she did, that supervisor that allowed her to bring the child, I mean, some heads are rolling. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. A lot of questions.
Well, I hope you're right. I don't think they're going to roll.
Well, like I said,
not with the left.
It is crazy. It is crazy, but I don't know how many people had caught this. This article popped up in the news yesterday also. It turns out there is a North Dakota radio station that is looking to sue possibly the Kamala Harris presidential campaign, because what the Harris campaign have done is they've put up ads, but they imitate an actual news article. So when you turn around and you look, you go through Google and you go to search certain things, her articles will come up at the top of the search. There's a way in which they rate them, which ones pop up first, using certain words and key phrases and everything else.
The algorithms.
The campaign had been able to craft these ads to mimic actual news items so that when people keyed in the search, her ads will pop up as the first item in the search. And what someone did, and they did a little video and showed it, they put in assassination and Trump. It came up with Truman. It came up with Teddy Roosevelt. It didn't come up with President Trump, but it came up with Kamala Harris articles that were actually her ads. So anyone that's doing a Google search or Axiom search or any of those major search engines, especially Google, and Google is complacent with it, allowing her to place these ads to mimic actual news items. Talk about misinformation.
Well, manipulation. I mean, I don't like all this AI stuff, all this digital stuff, because it can be manipulated and go unchecked in most cases.
Yeah. Well, it's Steve Hallstrom of the Fieldstone Consulting Group, which operates WDAY Radio in Fargo, North Dakota. He said that he reached out to the Harris campaign and demanded they terminate this ad immediately. And we're, one of the ads, the campaign ads, made it look like his news outlet backed her. Now, this is not the only individual who said that she has placed ads out there that insinuate someone who is not endorsing her is actually, in fact, endorsing them.
That's like a lot of local candidates here. They have on their posters pictures of them, taking a picture. They've taken a picture with Trump. And even though he didn't endorse them, it gives the illusion that he's endorsed them because they're using it on their campaign literature.
Now, there was a sheriff, I think he's department head. I caught a bit of it in California. Now, she was the attorney general there. Well, there was a massive news conference with all the local law enforcement chiefs. And he was there with them at the news press conference. Those pictures from that conference are in her ads, insinuating that his department or he personally endorses her, along with the others that were standing around her. Yet, he said, she walked into that room for the press conference. She didn't look at any of the other law enforcement chiefs there in the room. She didn't address anyone. She didn't even say hello, much less shake their hands. She walked up to the podium, spoke for 5 minutes, turned around, and left. Talk about a slap in the face. And then she has the audacity to use that video and those clips to insinuate that they were there to back her up. This, folks, is who we're supposed to trust our nation to. She can't even be honest about her ads and the endorsements.
Oh, wow. Hey, when do your early voting start? Ours started last Monday.
We start October 21st. Ours starts on October 21st, yeah. So I already told my husband and my mom, we're getting in the car and we're voting. I even double checked our voter registration to make sure it was all active. So, yeah.
Well, we just have like state and local elections going on right now. Like, state senator, representative, mayor, stuff like that. Committee woman, committee man. It's not national.
Our ballots are not going to be produced until 45 days before the election. And by federal law, they have to get out to people that are not being able to vote here in the state. The absentee ballots to military and things like that. They need 45 days in advance to receive those ballots and get the ballots back in. So we have the one, the only, the man of the hour, Mark Tapscott. Good afternoon, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Annie. Curtis, how you doing?
All right.
What's going on?
I've been going on a rant. So what else is new?
Camilla.
Oh, Queen Camilla Mella. I mean, the latest things with her advertisings coming up in Google as if they're actual news items. The advertising that she has out there insinuating certain individuals and law enforcement personnel are endorsing her when in fact the exact opposite. And this one station in Fargo, North Dakota is threatening to sue her because they're insinuating that they endorsed her. So I mean,
that's interesting.
I mean, what? I mean, you just cannot make up this silly season. I mean,
Well, you know,
we have
for the
seen some
most
crazy
part,
elections, but really, have you ever seen anything as nutso as this?
no, and I'm old enough to remember 1968.
Mhm.
Probably the last year that even approached what we've seen this year, and it only barely approaches it. So,
What was
Barely.
that? What was that? The Chicago 7 or something back then?
the Chicago convention, the Chicago
Mhm.
riots at the convention. Of course, there was Martin Luther King's assassination and Robert
Probably.
Kennedy Jr. or Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
You know, I believe there were a bunch of riots across the country. It was a
Mhm.
stressful time.
Yeah, I actually remember that because I remember I was in the schoolyard. We had just moved into a new town, so it was like the first year I was in the new school, and in the schoolyard, all of a sudden everyone's telling all about all the stuff going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
holy,
Yeah.
yeah. But where are we going to see something similar in Chicago? That's a big question because I was listening to some of the news conferences dealing with the law enforcement, and they're saying, well, we're going to make sure we cover all the precincts in Chicago because if you remember 68, it wasn't just Convention Hall, it spread out.
Yeah.
And then you're hearing about permits being given to people that are pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, pro-Antifa, but not to the counter protesters. And some of them are going to be inside the hall, I'm hearing, and some of them are going to be outside. But either way, whether or not you have a permit or not, you're going to be there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just read something yesterday that I did not know. The name of one of the Chicago neighborhoods, the name of which suddenly escapes me, has the largest population in the country of Palestinian immigrants. And I think the number was like 40,000. So
Wow.
they're talking about 30 to 50,000 demonstrators showing up. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than that, significantly more than that. And you can count on some number of the delegates who will either be part of those groups or will be sufficiently sympathetic to it that they'll take the demonstration in to the floor of the convention. So,
well, that's what I'm expecting.
yeah.
And, you know, having worked some riots, they're not fun, definitely. And you're not standing around with your thumb up your tush. And for the amount of people that are going to descend on Chicago, and we've already seen the violence in these riots, I don't think the Chicago police are going to be, you know, as well prepared. If anything, if I was the governor, I would be calling in the National Guard to back them up.
Well, now, if you call in the National Guard, according to Governor Tim Walz, you're just calling in a bunch of 19-year-old cooks. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we got a lot to talk about with Tim Walz that's coming out with the stuff that has been coming out in dribs and drabs, and they've been trying to hide it.
Yeah.
His honeymooning in Tiananmen Square 1 year after the Tiananmen Square massacre, his return every year for the next decade or so, his teaching in a communist Chinese college with a curriculum that was specifically approved by the Chinese Communist Party. Meanwhile, he was still in the National Guard and had access to secrets. And yet when he returned to the United States, he was bragging about getting so many gifts that he couldn't bring them all in. Now,
Man, Lee Harvey Oswald didn't have it that good in Russia.
Oh, what about taking the kids over there and telling them that when they get over there, don't act as if you're special and you're rich or anything like that. And you have to mimic everything that they say. We're going to teach you about the communist government and how it's so good for you. You're taking a school trip over there to indoctrinate them in the beauty of communism?
Yeah, I have a feeling that there's going to be more that we learn about that. I recall back in the 70s and somewhat into the 80s, there was a period there, particularly in the years right after Nixon opened up to China, Nixon and Kissinger. that an awful lot of folks in America, and when I say folks in America, I'm talking about the basically the elite types in the media and in politics and the corporate world, kind of became fanboys, if you will, of China. There was a self-interest involved in that because, of course, they wanted to invest in China.
Business.
They did. But there was also a lot of the non-business types that, were attracted to the aspects of the Chinese regime that assure order, we'll say. The totalitarian impulse is strong on the left.
Yeah, it always flabbergasts because here you're saying that you're liberal, meaning that you're supposed to allow everything and anything, and yet you insist on being a totalitarian.
Yeah.
So how does that saying go? Do what I say and not what I do.
Yeah. One of the things before we leave Chicago, I just recall something that I wanted to be sure to share with you guys and your audience. One of the best investigative reporters that I've ever worked with is a guy named Richard Pollack, who has a Substack column. And I didn't know this, actually. I've known Richard for years, but I didn't know until fairly recently that I knew when he was a younger guy, he had been on the left, but I didn't know how far on the left he was. He was actually a trainer for the in Saul Alinsky tactics for the New Left back in the early 70s, in how to, basically force a violent confrontation with the police. And he's been watching the pro-Palestinian stuff develop in recent months. And he says it's all right out of Alinsky's textbook. There's nothing new to it. And that being the case, I won't be surprised if we see some pretty serious action in Chicago during the convention. I hope not, but I won't be surprised.
That's what I fear, because I've had some experts in the Middle East here, one of them being Walid Perez, and it all comes back that a lot of these terrorists from Hezbollah and all the others actually have training in Moscow.
Yeah.
And people don't realize there is a direct connection between Moscow and the Arab world.
Oh, yeah.
Especially terrorism.
Yep.
And I why people don't want to hear this, I don't understand, because there is attempts by China and Russia to do destroys from within. And what's the best way to do it? And this is it.
Yeah.
And I do fear that it's going to be some very heavy violence.
I won't be at all surprised, guys, if at some point in the future, and it'll be after the convention next week, that we don't hear pretty persuasive evidence that a fair number of the people who will be demonstrating in Chicago next week, and very likely the ones who are most inclined or most involved in inciting violent activities, came across the border in the last 3 years.
I know you were going to say that. I knew exactly where you're going with that. And I would not doubt that at all. I've spoken many times. It was in, I moved here. It would have been somewhere around 98 or 99. And I got a cat. Shoot.
Curtis, what are we going to do with her?
Sorry about that. My cat just disconnected my headset.
I got one right here messing with me.
She almost took my whole mixer board down. Anyway, I was in a doctor's office. I swore it was Newsweek or one of those magazines, and the front cover said OTMs. It was the first time I ever saw the term OTMs. And it was other than Mexicans coming across the southern border. And this was being reported back in like 98 or 99.
Oh, yeah.
And I cannot find the article anymore. And they spoke about the Qurans and the prayer rugs and everything we're finding in the desert. And the signs written in Chinese to help the Chinese come across illegally. So we have been invaded for decades.
Yeah.
So why would I be surprised to find out that the leaders of these riots have come across illegally?
Yeah. leaders, followers, aiders and abettors. They came over here for a reason, and I don't think it has anything to do with living the American dream. I think it has to do with destroying the American dream.
Well, there is, to change the subject, right now there's a budget battle going on. And
really? I did not know that.
Oh, no. And, lo and behold, the Senate has a bipartisan agreement to break the Fiscal Responsibility Act caps and spend more money for both defense and non-defense purposes. All right, we passed the budget I can't even say it. We passed this act to keep our government in line with the fiscal budget. And now they want to break it as soon as they passed it.
Annie, Curtis, bottom line, when it comes to the budget, the federal budget, it's all smoke and mirrors. And the purpose of it is to give the politicians in both parties as much money from the taxpayers and wherever else they get it to dole out to their special interest buddies and to create new programs that will make the federal government bigger and supposedly do more good things for all of us. That bipartisan agreement basically is a perfect example of that. They're agreeing to spend more than they had agreed to spend 6 months ago. So, it's an election year. They know they're not going to get anything done until after the election. So it's basically a kicking the can down the road.
Well, they have a deadline of September 30th.
Right.
So I also hear rumors about a continuing resolution.
There will be.
Another one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'll have to be. My guess is they're probably going to be able to, you've got the Democrat majority in the Senate and the Republican majority in the House. They probably can reach agreement on some of the major ones, maybe the defense bill. But there will be 7 or 8 of them that they can't, and there'll have to be a continuing resolution to do that. And they love continuing resolutions because they're all 5,000 pages. Nobody can read them, so you can stuff all kinds of stuff in there that nobody finds until it's too late.
Yeah. Wow. Well, they cut like 75. One of the bills are coming through where they cut 75 million, but they want to include the SAVE Act. I don't see that going anywhere.
No, the SAVE Act won't. No, not until there's a different Congress. I just don't see that going anywhere.
Well, you gotta love Chip Roy. Gotta love Chip Roy. If anyone can make a little bit of a splash, he can. He's going after Kamala Harris because of the border. And he sent a letter to, the San Antonio Police Department asking for stats and numbers and figures on the damage that illegal immigration is doing down there. He's demanding answers and he's demanding hearings. Do you see this going anywhere? Because he's also calling out Kamala Harris on her silence.
Congressman Roy does a lot of that, and he is, before he was elected to Congress, he was, I think, chief of staff for Senator Ted Cruz. So he knows how to make waves, and I've listened to him many times, and it's clear. He feels a sense of genuine and justified outrage on behalf of taxpayers and on behalf of the American people, because this town is so full of stuff that is questionable at the very best. The problem is there's so many of them, and he's probably put out, I would be surprised if it was less than 20 letters like that, where he's demanding information that Congress has a fundamental right to have, because Congress is the first branch. But, the bureaucrats over in the executive branch, they ignore those letters basically because they know Congress is not going to make them produce them, or cut their budgets, cut their workforce, cut their authority, end programs. Congress has ceased to be enforcing its own constitutional authorities. If they get back to doing that and being the first branch, the bureaucrats will start listening to them.
Well, what I
Then
like
they
what
won't
he
have
did.
to do these kind of demand letters.
Well, see, now he didn't send this to the federal government. He sent this to the local police, to the San Antonio Police Department.
Well, of course, but the San
Which-
Antonio Police Department receives, trust me, hundreds of millions of federal tax dollars every year. And they have an obligation under the law, therefore, to produce the data that he's asking for.
Which is great, because he's saying that since January of 2021, 626,000 illegal immigrants have been encountered in just that San Antonio area, many of whom are from Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, Honduras. So he's asking about the San Antonio Migrant Resource Center, the MRC, which opened in July of 2022 and has housed more than 345,000 foreign nationals to date.
Wow.
So he's asking about how many calls are coming because of the people in this one center too.
Yeah.
So not only about the illegal crossings and passing through, but for the people that you've actually housed in San Antonio. I think it's rather clever.
Well, it is. And then, like I said, he learned a lot of tricks working for Ted Cruz. And I don't want to sound like I'm, discouraging congressmen like Chip Roy doing what they're doing when they do those demand letters, but we have to be realistic about what is likely to be the result as long as Congress continues basically to be a figurehead.
Wow. Well, also now we hear WHO has just put out a, whatever they call it, a World Health
Organization,
saying that the next epidemic is going to be, and this is now an emergency for the monkeypox.
Yeah. Are you surprised?
Well, when people get the monkeypox, it has only a 3% fatality rate at this point. It's generally restricted to men that are either homo or hetero or bisexual, or young children that eat tainted meat.
Right.
Now it becomes a world health emergency.
Yeah. Well, they were looking for one.
But gee, isn't there an election coming up?
There's an election coming up, and the World Health Organization has this a bunch of new authorities that they're seeking. They really want to become much more powerful and have much more to say about how every country on the face of the earth manages itself, including us. So, I'm not surprised at all that they think they have another pandemic coming.
Well, don't they want to exercise authority over our own healthcare system? They were trying that with COVID and saying that, well, we gave out this, and these are what we say you need to do, so you must follow it.
Yeah.
To heck with your sovereignty.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. We have people who are United States born citizens who buy into this global concept, being, this new world order and being one with the, with the globe.
Yep.
They have no sense of nationality.
If your basic impulse is to accumulate more power, you want to have as much of it as you can, and that's there's a whole world out there.
Yeah, so they don't want no borders, and that's why
they don't want borders. Exactly.
Oh man. Well, getting back to the White House, we're still waiting for Kamala Harris to have a press conference, and I was watching the interview. I forget if it was CNN or MSNBC, one of those, and they actually tried to get one of her representatives to say, yes, she's going to do a press conference. And I hear him dance around the question. And no matter how the question was asked, and I got to give credit because this one reporter on this liberal station was pressing him for an answer. He's going, well, she's got all these rallies scheduled and she's going to be out there speaking to the people.
Yeah.
No, not to the press, but to the people. So there'll be times where, and they actually said to her, listen, all it takes is you pick up the phone. We come to you, we'll find a little room for you to sit down. We set everything up, bing, bang, boom, it's done. It's not a lot of problems or work. We'll come straight to you wherever you are. But no, well, we're going to give you the information on where she'll be and when she'll be. But, she has her rallies and she'll be talking to the people.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what's going to happen in the next week or two. She will sit down for an interview with somebody, probably 60 Minutes or maybe Stephanopoulos at ABC. And there will be a couple of seemingly tough questions, but there won't be the follow-up question that is important about in order to get to the real meat of the issue. But everybody will say, well, yeah, she did a great job on that, so she's now done a sit-down interview. And a couple of days later, they will schedule a news conference with some very carefully selected campaign reporters. And again, there will be some seemingly tough questions, but she'll get through it. And then after that, they'll say, look, she's done the sit-down interview. She did the news conference. These criticisms that she's not talking to the media is old news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then
it'll be scripted.
They will minimize her contact with the media as much as possible between now and election day.
It'll be carefully scripted like they did to Biden. She will be fed the questions. She will rehearse the answers. Look for the cue cards in her hand and look for the person. They're going to call them out by name. All right, next, I'm answering your question. And they won't take any other outside questions.
Yeah.
It'll be very carefully scripted.
Yeah, very carefully scripted.
And I thought she didn't have time because she was too busy getting fitted for her dress for her coronation. I'm going to be the queen.
I'm sure it'll be a beautiful dress.
Well, we still have no policy from her. We are hearing that her economic policy is coming out soon. But however, with that statement in mind, this came out just 2 days ago. Press secretary, you just can't make her up, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked about her policies. Well, in her answers, every time she tried to answer the question, she tied Kamala Harris into Joe Biden. They're partners. They have this. So she's actually tied Kamala Harris to all the failed policies of President Biden. I said, did I say Obama? he's the puppet master. But Biden. Yeah. So, did she just shoot her in the foot?
Well, it's tempting to think that perhaps that's part of Joe Biden's revenge for getting kicked off of the Democratic presidential ticket. And that, that's what happened. He was forced to withdraw. And he probably should have. I mean, the health problems that he has have been obvious for a long time. But even having said that, the way it was done was it was brutal. It was brutal. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's saying, okay, you wanted somebody other than me, you're going to take her. You can't say no to her. And she did everything that I said she should do. She was my vice president. So it's my policies. And if that defeats her, well, you guys got what you wanted,
Well, I also heard that they moved him from the back of the last day of the convention to the first day. And I'm wondering if that's to keep him because he's going to get tired or he's going to start to stumble because of his disability. Or is he going to get up there and do one of these rah-rah, sis, boom, bah things?
He probably will.
Because I also heard someone say that he's going to get up there and say, I'm back, I'm running.
No, he won't say that, I can tell you. But the reason he's on the first day, I can tell you, is the first day of a convention is typically the least watched.
Mm-hmm.
The important speeches come on the first day. The really important ones come on the last day. And you would think, for example, that perhaps Joe Biden might be the one to introduce Kamala Harris to the convention
Oh no.
once she actually officially has the nomination. You know, that would be the way to hand the torch off. That won't happen.
Well, I think a friend of yours here that just popped in for his interview. I know you said you'd only be here 15 minutes and you stayed here longer.
You did it. You did it.
You know, I'm such a bad girl. Anyway, I love this guy, Hans von Spakovsky.
Hey, Hans,
how are
hope
you?
Enjoyed your lunch.
Yeah. Annie, Mark and I saw each other at lunch today.
Yeah. I warned him, Annie. I warned him. Hans, I'm going to hand it over to you now because I've got to go.
All right. I'll see you in 2 weeks, Mark. You take care.
And
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, how are you doing today? And how was lunch?
Lunch was great. But I'll tell you, Washington, D.C. at the moment is pretty much empty. You know, everybody, Congress is out of session. They're all home campaigning. School is out. So the city is literally like a ghost town.
Well, that's a good thing.
Nice.
That's a good thing.
It is. Like I said, it's too bad that it's not like that the rest of the year. Then we'd have less problems and trouble coming out of Congress.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about because I came across your article on redistricting.
Right.
And of course, here in South Carolina, we won in District 1. They did not redraw it. And matter of fact, when they were trying to redraw the district, I had made a couple of videos, which I sent in to the committee. And actually, a lot of people, once they saw the video, started to say, you know, you have the perfect points. And I think that was one of the things that helped keep our district intact. So I was very curious about what you would write on this redistricting. And as I got little yellow highlights and everything all over it. The redistricting is based on Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. And I'm going to let you start to explain what you were talking about, and then I'll go in with you on this one.
You're referring to an article I wrote about a recent decision by the 5th District U.S. Court of Appeals. 5th District covers Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And look, in addition to the Constitution, actually what I think is probably one of the two most important laws ever passed by Congress in the last century was the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the other one being the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But both of those laws, I think, not only were the most important laws ever passed by Congress the last century, but they were extremely effective. Now, the Voting Rights Act, as you know, bans racial discrimination in voting. Now, at the time it was passed, boy, it was needed. But the kind of discrimination that was occurring at the time it was passed, discrimination preventing African Americans and others from registering to vote, being able to vote, that had pretty much disappeared by the late 70s, early 80s. So for the last 3 decades, the Voting Rights Act has been used almost exclusively in redistricting cases. And the argument that's always made in those cases, and what the Supreme Court has recognized, is that in areas where a racial group is a minority, and that could be Hispanics, Black Americans, Asians, American Indians, it can actually also be white voters because the law is racially neutral. If they are a minority, and they are unable to elect their candidate of choice in elections because they just don't have enough votes to do it. What the process that has occurred in redistricting is to form a district in which that racial group is actually a majority of voters. The typical example of this is, maybe you have a county government with 5 county commission seats. And so what you would do is, instead of having everybody elected at large, if, for example, African residents of that county are 25% of the population, well, if folks are elected at large, they may never be able to vote their candidate of choice in. So what you do is you create one of those county commission districts, if you can, where that 25% of the whole county population is 50% plus one in that one district. What happened in the case in Galveston is that in Galveston County, Black residents aren't enough, and they're not concentrated in one location enough to create a majority of voters in one of the county commission positions. Hispanic voters are also, there aren't enough Hispanic voters to create one district in which Hispanic voters are a majority of the voters. So what happened is the Justice Department came in and said, oh, well, the Voting Rights Act requires you to create a district in which, when you combine the number of Black voters, which was about 31%, and you combine them with the Hispanic voters, which was about 24%, those two racial groups are a majority of voters, and therefore they'll be able to elect a candidate. And what the 5th District said is, no, the Voting Rights Act doesn't require that, because in that case, you're not protecting against racial discrimination, you're protecting a political alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those voters, the Black residents of Galveston, the Hispanic residents of Galveston, maybe they're voting for the same candidate, perhaps a Democratic candidate, although in Galveston, actually one of the Republicans commissioners is an African American. But they're voting together because of politics, not race. And that is not a requirement under the Voting Rights Act. So a very important decision. Yeah, it was about county commission districts in Galveston, but that ruling applies to every kind of political district, whether it's a county government or a congressional district. By the way, Sheila Jackson Lee, as you know, just recently passed away, and for a long time represented a congressional district, mostly based in Houston. That was a coalition district, like the Justice Department wanted created in Galveston County. So this could have a big effect on all kinds of districts, and not just in Texas, but also in places like Mississippi and Louisiana.
Well, you on your article, you were also saying that a lot of this was based upon the census. And the census that currently is out there, it counts illegal aliens or non-citizens in it, which dilutes the purpose of the Constitution, that article in the Constitution, where it's supposed to be to form our legislative representation.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Apportionment, which happens, every 10 years after the census, because the number of seats in the U.S. House are limited. It was growing as we were adding states to the Union, but in the 1920s, Congress passed a law saying this is the maximum number. So every 10 years, what happens is every state, they determine how many members of the U.S. House that state has based on total population. Well, that's now very unfair to American citizens, because it means that states like California and New York, which have large numbers of aliens, both legal and illegal, get more congressional seats than they should. So you're diluting the votes of U.S. citizens. But look, it also affects redistricting. When states redistrict and draw new boundary lines for congressional districts, for example, they're using total population. And again, that's diluting the votes of citizens. In fact, African-American voters are very much impacted by using total population. Why? Because the citizenship rate of African-Americans in this country is extremely high. It's like 96%. Whereas the citizenship rate of Hispanic voters, of Hispanic individuals in the country is only about 60%. So when you're using total population, you're diluting the votes of African Americans in the districts that you're drawing, and that's something that the states can't change apportionment. That's a federal statute. That's federal law, but they could change the population they use for redistricting. They could specify that we're only going to use citizen population for redistricting, and they ought to do it because that's really the only fair way to draw up new boundary lines.
Yeah, because we had the battle here in South Carolina in District 1. It was the one that Beer Can Joe Cunningham had taken over, Nancy Mace now has. And the way they wanted to cut us up, it was actually going to carve us into like 3 different pieces. And our argument, rather than going on the political side, saying, all right, I know that if they did that, they would have turned us blue. Most of us wanted to keep it red, but instead of using the fight of politics, we used the fight of economics. And we said, listen, the way you're dividing us, you're forcing us to be part of another district and legislator that has no idea what our needs are. What they do up country is completely different than what we do in the coastal town. They don't understand the fishing industry. They don't understand the tourism, the hospitality industry that we have. We're united because we have all this all in kind. And when you split us up, you're putting us each into districts that have no idea what our needs are. So we need a representative to handle our needs.
Yeah, that actually, Anna, it's interesting you mentioned that, because that, in fact, that was an issue in the Galveston case that I was just talking about. Because
maybe they saw my video.
Because what the Justice Department was objecting to with one of the county commission districts was the county commissioners say, because remember, Galveston is a port town on the Gulf of Mexico, and so they created a district that was a coastal district, because all of the people along the coast of Galveston, frankly, no matter what their race, all had similar interests. And so they created a district like that, and instead the Justice Department's coming in and saying, "Oh no, you have to break that up, and you have to create this very squiggly gerrymander district for racial reasons." And fortunately, the Fifth Circuit said, "Well, no, Galveston, you don't have to do that."
So maybe I helped somewhere. I know we kept this district together. Oh man, you talk about how in the past the Voting Rights Act, not the Voting Rights Act, but the census had required for you to state if you were a citizen born here, and then that stopped a while back, and then President Trump tried to bring it back again.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why the SAVE Act is so important, because I didn't realize, but the federal voting form doesn't require you to state if you're a citizen or not.
Well, if you're talking about the federal voter registration form, that does, but the census form that unfortunately people all fill out these days no longer asks that question. What's so bizarre about that is that, look, the first time we had a citizenship question on the U.S. Census, it was recommended by President Thomas Jefferson. So it was on the first 1820 census. And it continued to be on the census until 1950, when you may recall you won't recall, but historically what happened was the Census Bureau decided that they would send out 2 census forms, a short form and a long form. The long form continued to have the citizenship question on it. And then when the Obama administration came in, they said, we're only going to use the short form and there will be no citizenship question on it. So all Trump was trying to do was reinstate it as it had been done historically. And of course, as you know, they were sued. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you can do this constitutionally. It's within the power of the president and Congress. But President Trump, you didn't give a sufficiently reasonable explanation of why you want to put a citizenship question on the form. So you have to give a better explanation. The problem is, that's what they said. The problem is that decision by the court did not come out of the court until beginning of the summer of 2019, which meant that the Trump administration didn't have enough time to come up with a lengthier, better explanation. Because why? They had to get hundreds of millions of census forms printed and distributed. And so that's why when the 2020 census form was sent out, it had no citizenship question on it. That has got to be added for the 2030 census. But as you know, there's a partisan divide on this, and Democrats in both the U.S. House and Senate are completely and totally opposed to having a citizenship question on the census.
Yeah, because it skews the vote. Because if you count in the illegal aliens or the residents here that are not citizens but foreign national legal residents, it takes away the power of one person, one vote, because Article 1, Section 2 says it is for forming the legislation and then the direction of taxes.
Yeah. Well, look, the political reason why they don't want that citizenship question on there is that if apportionment was based on citizen population as opposed to total population, California would probably lose anywhere from 4 to 6 congressional seats. New York would probably lose 2 congressional seats. Illinois would lose a congressional seat because those are 3 of the states with the largest populations of aliens in the country. So they're afraid of losing political power if aliens, including illegal aliens, aren't counted and used in the apportionment process.
But they have no problem wanting to grow the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Well, to flip the subject, the Heritage Foundation came up with Project 2025.
Right.
And recently, the Democratic Party is like, oh, no, the nation's going to fall apart because President Trump is going to be initiating Project 2025 as if it was something that he came up with.
Dictator for life.
This is something the Heritage Foundation had been working on for a long time. It's a very large, lengthy document. Matter of fact, I had the 5 great points of 2025 printed out somewhere, and I can't find it now. But it's approximately, I think it's like 1,000 pages. And it deals with a lot of different things, not just one item, but how, if a new administration came in, wanted a guideline on how to pare down government, make it more efficient, and give the people back more freedom, this document would do it, would it not?
It would. It's over 900 pages. So yeah, it is close to 1,000 pages. And there were all these claims out there that, the Trump campaign created it. That's a complete and total lie. The other thing that's been said is there's been a whole list of things that it supposedly says put out by the Kamala Harris campaign now, all of which are also complete fabrications. But in essence, what we did was in 2022, so that's 2 years ago, long before Donald Trump said he was going to re-enter the race, we got together over 100 organizations, other conservative think tanks, other organizations, and several hundred people. And we said, look, if you were put in charge of the executive branch of the federal government in a new administration, so starting in January 2025, how would you reform each of the executive departments? So there's a chapter in this 900-page book on every major government department, the Department of Education, the Justice Department, the Defense Department. And each chapter says, here are the reforms that are needed, and here's how these agencies should be pulled back into doing what they're supposed to be doing, what Congress wanted them to do under the law, as opposed to the things that they are now doing that they're not supposed to be doing. And look, a good example of that is the Kamala Harris campaign claimed that our chapter on the Department of Education called for the termination of the school lunch program. No, that's a lie. But what we have said is that the federal government should not be using that program or that funding as a threat as the Biden administration recently did. You two probably saw that the Biden administration was threatening to cut off federal funding for the school lunch program to local schools that did not allow boys into girls' bathrooms and did not allow boys to compete in girls' sports. That is not the kind of power that should be or can be exercised by the federal government. And we're saying that kind of thing shouldn't happen. And what I would tell you is that anybody who's worried about this, who's been reading these fabrications about it, look, this is no secret. We've got it up on the web. It's project2025.org. The entire 900-page policy book is on the web. And what I would tell people is, look, yeah, maybe you can't read the whole 900 pages. Just pick one chapter of a department you're interested in. Maybe it's the Justice Department. Just read that one chapter, and I'm willing to bet you anybody reading it is going to come out and say, you know what? These are common sense reforms. This is reasonable. This is what ought to be done.
Go ahead, Chris. Yep.
Well, we see how well that rainbow agenda went over in Paris. Didn't go over too well. But, they're going to try. I mean, they're complaining about 2025, but I hear nobody talking about Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 on the left.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, because when you look at the people working in the Biden administration, the top people in the White House and elsewhere, look, they came from all these radical left-wing advocacy groups in Washington, all of whom were putting plans together long before
2025
Biden was sworn in as president. So we're doing the same thing on the conservative side, although I think anybody who looks at what we're proposing is going to realize what we're saying is a lot more sensible.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned Agenda 21. When Newt Gingrich was running for president in I think it was 2016 that he was running, he came to our county, and the three Tea Parties here came together to hold a rally with him. And my late husband built the stage for him to stand on and drove out there. And we sat down with him prior to the rally, a bunch of us from the leaders of the Tea Party, and just had a little coffee and some breakfast before going out. Newt Gingrich did not know what Agenda 21 was, and we had to school him.
Wow.
We found that he was Speaker of the House, and he had no idea what Agenda 21 was, and we had to turn around and explain to him what it was, why we were opposing it. And after that, that was when he turned the corner on supporting Agenda 21. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about this is, look, we published this policy proposal book more than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you all notice it didn't become a big news item until what? The presidential debate, right? And I think that what happened is the Democrats, I think the Biden campaign at the time, said, boy, we need a distraction for the American public from, one, our horrible economic record, and two, from the questions that the public was raising about the mental and physical decline of the president. And that's when it was after the debate that all of a sudden Project 2025 was criticized all over the media, on the mainstream media, the left, the allies of liberals and the Biden administration. That's suddenly when it became an issue. I think it was just a distraction from the problems they were experiencing.
Well, when I heard Trump getting upset and angry, saying, "Oh no, it's a terrible plan and horrible people put it together," I'm going, "Wait a minute. I guess he never read any part of it or spoke to anyone at Heritage. So he had nothing to do with this. So whoever was trying to link it to him, and I guess maybe that was the best thing he could have done, is distance himself. But then if he gets elected, I'd like to see him using a lot of what's in there."
Well, I think what Donald Trump was reacting, he was angry because whether it was MSNBC or the New York Times, they were all saying, oh, this was created by the Trump campaign. And he knew it wasn't created by the Trump campaign. So I think he was angry that he was being told that. And that's why he said, I have nothing to do with this. But yeah, look, what we're hoping is that this wasn't written for Donald Trump. This was written for whoever gets elected in this election. Now, if it's Donald Trump, it's highly more likely that he might actually follow what we're saying. If it's Kamala Harris, she's not likely to. But what we would look, the best ideal scenario would be for this to happen. This is not the first time Heritage has done this, as you said. The first time Heritage ever put together a policy proposal like this called Mandate for Leadership was when Ronald Reagan was elected. And Ronald Reagan actually read it once he was elected, and he liked it so much that at his first meeting of his new cabinet, all his cabinet secretaries, he actually handed out a bound copy of our policy proposal and said to all his cabinet secretaries,
implement.
Yeah, these are great ideas. I want you all to read this and follow them. And that's what we were hope would happen in a new administration.
Man, the Heritage Foundation puts a lot of great policy out there, and you also were very effective in working with FAIR USA on putting together HR 2, which did pass in the House. And I was down there in D.C. when FAIR flew us all into D.C. to do the lobbying, going from one side of the quad to the other, to try to get the Senate together to finally pass it. And what they put together instead was a debacle. Are you still trying to help push HR 2 through?
Well, we'd love to, but at the moment, as you know, nothing's going through Congress. Congress is in recess until the election is over. You're not going to see anything happening in Congress except for, at some point they'll probably before the election, they're going to have to pass another continuing resolution of some kind to keep the government funded. But until the election happens and we know the results, we're not going to see anything going through Congress.
Well, it's going to be interesting because silly season is just going to get worse, especially with the convention coming up. And
Right.
as you know, that with Mark, we were talking to him with potential for the violence going on in Chicago, and having worked riots in Brooklyn, New York, that's going to be far worse. And I think it's going to be worse than 1968. But our
Right.
prayer is going to be with the people living in Chicago at this point. But are you working on anything else right now at this point?
Well, actually, I have a paper in progress on the Biden executive order that he issued several years ago, directing all federal agencies to get involved in something they're not authorized to do.
I know what you're going to say. Get out the vote. The vote.
Registering voters and helping them complete and fill out absentee ballots. And that's not something that federal government employees should be involved in. So I've got a paper coming out about how that is both unconstitutional and a violation of federal law.
Well, not only is it unconstitutional, but why isn't the House now withholding funds from those agencies for that very purpose?
Well, you have to talk to people on the House side about that.
No backbone.
But the House does have the power of the purse, and they can say, right, for this program, for getting people to register to vote, because my mom, she gets a Medicare statement in, and there's something in there about, registering to vote. I was like, she's looking at this, why is that on here? And then
Right.
she got something else from the government, and again, the same thing. And that's when put two and two together and came up with 1,000.
Yep, that's right.
Well, this is all we got. We're down to our last 5 minutes of the show, Hans. It's always fun when I have you and Mark. I'm glad the two of you had lunch together.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We were both at the same restaurant, and we ran into each other. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm following you on the radio show today.
So you got to talk about me behind my back.
That's right.
Well, Hans, thank you for joining us. And we
Sure.
know we love you and always want you to come on back.
All right. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right, Hans von Spakovsky over at the Heritage Foundation. Like I said, we're down to our last 5 minutes. What we have coming up next week, I'm waiting for confirmation on it.
Who you got?
I'm waiting because I've been trying to get a hold of their agent, Caitlin Wheeler and Olivia Kroslick. They are the ambassadors for the Riley Gaines Center at the Leadership Institute. And want to get them on for next week. If not, I will scramble to get someone else on. I'll let you all know who I have as soon as I know. So that's all we got for today. I want to thank everyone that joined us. A lot of people were watching over on X and Facebook and all the other places that we're on. I hope that you went to our homepage. I did not open the homepage to watch the chat. I'm sorry. I knew I forgot to do something. But we will be back, same bad time, same bad station, until next week. We'll say good night and God bless.
I'm praying for this land I love, America. America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. For the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. America, we've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. For the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save